always be freedom. It'll always be freedom.
If we are going to create freedom in our lifetime, we need to explore alternative ways to build community and remove ourselves from centralized institutions that corrupt and erode.
Welcome back to Conversations in Anarchy. Today we're going to be continuing looking into the upcoming Non-Conformist Series, newest edition, Unleash Your Resilience, Claim Your Sovereignty, Anarchapulco's virtual event that is going live on May 16th and 17th. And today with me, I have two men that have been walking the walk of sovereignty and self-ownership for a while, and they're both going to be present at the upcoming Non-Conformist Series. So please welcome Ernest Hancock and Noone. Welcome, guys. Thank you so much for being here today. How are you doing?
Pleasure.
I'm doing good.
It's nice here. We're in the Sonoran Desert. It's nice here,
Okay.
you know.
Okay.
I'm sure Jay's cold.
Nope. It's like been in the 60s and the 70s the past couple of days. We got a little bit of nice rain. The snow is like almost all melted. The little creek's running, the little, surface water creek that, kind of runs through our property. My kid's been playing in that every day since we've gotten home from Florida. Yeah, it's been good. We were in Florida for a couple of weeks doing some stuff, had a great time. We went to the David Avocado Health and Rejuvenation Conference. That was a good time. Was able to trade silver with a bunch of people there. I traded silver with almost everyone on our trip. That was pretty fun. So,
Yeah, no, I enjoy your videos, in your children, Cypress and Cassius, that's, part of my day.
But first, guys, if you could introduce yourself to those that meet you for the very first time and haven't heard about you, would you tell who you are, what you have been working with, and what's your mission about? Maybe Jay, we can start with you.
So I'm Noone. My website is jnoone.com, which doesn't really have anything updated on it right now. It's pretty old. And my mission is to restore confidence in mankind through my homeschool co-op, Man Camp. And what I really want to do is sort of spread the Man Camp idea to other people who have skills and want to, teach those skills to young kids. And so, what I'm doing is the idea is to get the kids to earn the dopamine hits from doing work, doing skills, and not from devices and junk food and things like that. And as Ernie and I have discussed multiple times now, is the opposite of fear is competence. And if we can raise Generation Next to be useful, valuable, and competent, they're not going to vote for more government. In fact, currently, the useful, valuable, and competent people I know don't go out and vote because they're usually working, because they're valuable and they're getting paid well to go to work or do whatever they like to do. So yeah, that's pretty much my mission is, and also spreading the silver bug. Because I'm wearing this Silver Bits pin. You can go to silverbits.com and check out what local Silver Mint has to offer. And I was down at Anarchapulco and, I was at Liberty Forum in New Hampshire this year, and also in Florida with the David Avocado Wolf conference, spreading the silver bug and giving kids silver to bring home and spend at their local farmers market. I even, your kids didn't make it to Anarchapulco this year, but I made sure I sent them some silver to spend at a local farmers market.
Yes, you did. We unfortunately don't have any local farmers markets here, but they are saving those bits for later. So they were really happy. Thanks, Jay.
You're welcome.
What about you, Ernest?
I'm Ernest Hancock. I just been a long time libertarian activist since the late 80s. And so I started when I was like 28, my wife and I, and our 4 kids. And now it's, 35, 40 years later, and we're still doing it. And I have 4 children, 12 grandkids, so I'm invested. This is a thing with us. and I publish Freedom's Phoenix, Freedoms with an S, freedomsphoenix.com. It's a news portal that's been around since '05. And we've been advocating for leave me aloneism for, ever. And our latest project is Occupy the Land. Here, I can see if I don't know if that'll show, I take the blur off. But it's been a very interesting path that we've taken, and it culminated in what's the solution. The solution is, in my opinion, is like Jay says, self-sufficiency and not being dependent on. And it's just been a really rewarding experience to find your tribe, people that understand what this is all about. It's about, you own yourself. And once you understand that, you put your hand on someone's shoulder and say, whose life is this? Well, it's mine. Well, welcome to the club. I mean, but it's, that's why I'm so supportive of what Jay does, is that it starts at a foundational, fundamental understanding of what your role here is on this planet is to, sustain your life, to maintain your existence, to, be your full potential as a human being. And it's just been rewarding that now we're starting to see that people are starting to understand fundamentally what we're talking about. But I'm afraid that as we count coup, saying we were right and you were wrong, ha ha ha, then what? And it's just we're advocating that people can live a quality life with the technology that we have available now. With your shelter, energy, food, and educating your own kids, and it's just really it's unassailable that this world was not meant for us to be slaves. It's real simple. And humanity marches on. And no matter how bad it gets, humans just have this, understanding and enough critical thinking to know that I want to keep breathing in and out, and anybody that tries to stop you from breathing in and out, we have the ability to understand, recognize it, and take on these existential threats to our freedom and our communities and ourselves. And the future is so filled with abundance, and we just need to advocate for that. And my wife and I are demonstrating the capability of doing that. And I know Jay does it too. He's, a lot of our best friends are people that are self-starters, self-sufficient, aware. And it's just generation next is where we have our responsibility. And for those that haven't understood or created their own freedom in their lives, that we demonstrate that you can, and that it's easy, and that, it's relatively easy. It's available, and that our work towards that is going to be better, not just for our own lives and that of our future generations, but the planet. Freedom's the answer. What's the question? And that's what we advocate for and demonstrate and do, and try and give the competence. I heard that from Jay. I remember it was maybe, God, 5, 6, 7 years ago or something. I asked Jay and I said, what's the opposite of fear? And he goes, competence. And it's just in the last few weeks I've been hearing that. It's like, it's osmosis. I don't know, from Jay or just, you start thinking it and all of a sudden you start hearing it come back. So I've heard that between competence. That is, something that I think frees us. It's once we understand that we have the skills to survive and thrive, and then have leaders that would demonstrate that in the form of, I'm a big supporter of silver. We did silver dime cards, right after the Levolution in '08, 9, 10, we did that. And we needed 10th ounce rounds for us to trade. So I sent Jay and Dave, the local silver mint, 100-ounce bar, they have a deposit thing that you can lend them your silver and then get 5% in silver back every year. And I go, hell yeah. Plus I really like the 10-ounce rounds idea. So we, in the community here, we demonstrate that. We have our own agorist market. We use Xano as the private currency for us to do in the community out here. But a lot of people like silver. You give me something. I got to download a app of whatever, which we do. But and we have our own communication network out here. We get 200 down, 100 up on a mesh network that interfaces with our Starlink that goes outside the community as well. So we're living the ideas that we have been advocating, and that inspiration gives them the skills and they get the competence to be able to live free, and then they lose their fear, because they can. So I'm looking forward to talking about these things. Thank you.
Yeah, I can suggest all the audience to watch Ernest Hancock's video "What If You Knew" on YouTube, where you can actually get to know like history of Ernest's activist path. I would say that is quite a lot of information there. And the link to the video is in the descriptions below. But right now, for example, for me that have never been to your places, haven't been even to United States, could you tell like shortly how is your everyday life looking from, how is it? What are your everyday duties or concerns or activities that you and your family are doing?
Well, for myself, we live on 18 acres out in the Sonoran Desert, about 70 miles west of Phoenix, and we look for hundreds of places. So we wanted to live in the desert, because our children, when you got 4 kids and 12 grandkids, in the area, guess where you're going? I mean, that kind of thing. And when we did the Love Bus Liberty tour during COVID, we bought an MCI bus that we fitted out with a studio and living quarters and everything, and it's really nice. And Jay found it. It was in New Hampshire, and he knew we were doing this in the end of 19. He goes, "Hey, I think I found it." Boom, bought it. He and Derek Soapy helped us equip it and rebuild everything, every bearing, every strut, every. And Jay was a big part of that. And we use that as our base for where we are in the 18 acres. We've been here almost 2 years, and it's been infrastructure. I mean, for 2 people, it's just Donna and I, because I'm not really want it to be a hippie hangout, for everybody. Hey, a lot of people want to come stay out here, but we got a Kubota tractor with all the attachments and so on, and you have to get a cab with air conditioning because it's 120 degrees in the summer. And it's I get up in the morning, we check our news site, we do a lot of work with that. Probably got 3 or 4 hours in the morning doing that every day. We do probably 3 to 6 shows a week, and we operate that from here. And then every spare moment I have, I'm out on the land. We're building. And all the techniques and everything, we have occupytheland.org as the site and for our videos and so on. And we do alternative building because we're in the desert. Now, Jay and our friends Derek and stuff in the Northeast, guess what? You got lumber, I don't have lumber. I got dirt. So we have a trommel and separation of the dirt. I have all the material here I need. The only thing that I really go by, outlet boxes and wiring and stuff like that. But generally, the building is adobe. It's the dirt, it's sand, it's concrete, it's steel reinforcement. So we're building. What we're doing is we're building stuff that lasts for centuries. You have hyper adobe earth bags that we do. Then we have geodesic domes that we construct. I have a stamp press. We turn EMT conduit into domes. We reinforce it with wire and then cover it with cement, and having a lot of fun. But it goes slow, and we're right at the point to where it's going to start going a lot faster. The infrastructure is set, and the workshops and the concrete pads and the work, and we have, our first prototype dome is about 80% done. So it's we're building a 20-foot sphere that we're burying in the ground as our root cellar now. Well, that gives me 2 stories as a workshop on top. So it's very interesting. I'm very busy. We're very involved, and we're building community up here. And we just make our backhoe and tractor available to our neighbors. We let, hey, you got a project? Yeah, we'll come over, give me a deal on something. And I get, fence posts and fencing and, some PVC. That when we barter and trade. And that's where the silver and crypto comes in. Because like a good neighbor, Ernie and Donna is there. And being willing to help, that's what integrates you. And being capable and competent is what integrates you into the community. And it's that way anywhere till I talk to people. And I understood that they didn't know. They just, what if you knew? That was the title. I go, what if you knew what was going to happen? And then I did some frames of, different news things, during my life of certainly the 90s. You got all kinds of stuff going on. And what if you knew? What if you knew this was going to happen? What if you knew? What would you do? Well, we've been doing it. And I encourage other people to get ready because it's here, everything that we've been talking about. So that's our day. It's constantly, Donna has her projects on the land, and we're within an hour and a half of grandkids soccer games. So, we spend a lot of time with family, but it's, that's what it's all been about. And we started when we were in our 20s. So now I just turned 65. So it's been a long road. I'm just saying.
Yeah. What about you, Jay? How is it your everyday life with your family?
All right. Sorry about that. My wife was just calling me. So,
you always answer the what?
Yes. So anyways, Laura, I just sent you a couple of links. One link is a YouTube link to my presentation I did at PorcFest last year. So if people want to, learn a little more about what I'm doing, that's a really good 45-minute explanation. And also, I also sent you a link to PorcFest 28. Oh, no, I'm sorry. 23 spontaneous order. So I'm doing a whole man camp week at my farm, my homestead this summer, basically the weekend of June 20th into that week a little bit. I haven't totally figured a schedule out. And now I'm kind of drawing a blank here and what I was supposed to be saying.
Your day to day, man. You wake up and do what?
Yes.
My day to day. Well, right now I'm in an office at local Silvermint's new factory. So I've been tooling this factory up basically for about the last 12 weeks, except for the 2 weeks I was in Puerto Vallarta for Anarchapulco, and except for the 2.5 weeks I was gone to Florida here recently. We had to go down there for a couple of different things. And so generally my day to day when I'm not working on the Silvermint, I only took this job because, or I'm only doing this because Dave's a very good friend of mine, and we had some hiccups, and he kind of needed me in here, and so we're getting a bunch done. But generally my day to day is I wake up and we do farm chores with the kids, or usually it's in the wintertime, it's wake up and we read books. On the couch, my 4 and my 6-year-old currently. I got a 4-year-old son and a 6-year-old daughter, Cash and Cypress. And then we'll go, in the wintertime, we don't so much do some farm chores. It's a little brutal on the kids up here. But a lot of it, in the summertime, we do farm chores. And one of the things that my son loves to do with me is when I'm plowing snow, he'll run the plow on the truck and I'll let him steer. A couple of weeks ago, when we got home from Anarchapulco, he rode the 4-wheeler a lot. He's got a 50cc 4-wheeler. In fact, I just ordered my kids Amazon 50cc kid dirt bikes. They are cheap and they have really good reviews. So a couple of dirt bikes might actually be in boxes when I get home. And I'm getting myself a dirt bike, so we're going to be doing that. But generally, it's as summer during the summer. Like next week, I got 150, broilers coming, meat birds that we're gonna, chickens we're gonna raise for meat, and so we'll go. Me and the kids will go deal with them every morning and every evening. We let them out, and then we put them away. You have to put them, sort of pen them up and lock them up around here. We got lots of fisher cats and raccoons and things that like to eat little chickens and even big chickens. And then we got some cows that we tend to, and actually next in about 2 weeks I'll have a couple of piglets showing up, so we'll be dealing with our piglets. And so we just do a bunch of farm chores, like we grind our own grain. We actually incorporate biochar into our feed program, charcoal that I make all winter long for my outdoor wood boiler. So it varies quite a bit what I'm doing depending on the season and what animals we have to take care of. But it's mostly essentially, farming is what I'm doing, and farming at a level I can do it with my kids. And then I also run a homeschool co-op, which is every Tuesday. So we officially start our homeschool co-op next week, or 4 days from now, roughly. Hopefully, we got our day-old chicks by then. And I have kids and families and kids come and they do farm chores 1 day a week. And then when it comes time to butcher the chickens, they all help butcher the chickens. So for the past like 4 years, we've been butchering the chickens right at my place. Before that, I was running them over to a friend's place and we were butchering them up there, Bardo Farm. And so, yeah, one of the things that I'm going to be doing, and then this year last year we butchered 3 pigs at our property, and the year before I think we did 6 pigs. So the homeschool co-op kids and the moms are learning essentially the entire process of pork, from the piglets being born to like feeding them, dealing with them, mixing the grain, castrating the male pigs. And so all pigs have one bad day. Unless you're a boy, then you have 2 bad days on the farm. It's just kind of the way it works. You gotta castrate them, and the kids are right there for that whole process. And then the kids learn everything from the pigs being born to putting a pork chop in a vacuum seal pack. So I'll kill the pig. I don't let the kids watch me shoot the pig. I do that in my stock trailer, and then we pull it out, and the past couple of years we've been skinning the pig. Actually, I got a really good video of Cypress this past January. She basically cut the hide off the pig, used a skinning knife and did about 80% of the work. And she did it until she was tired. She's like, "Oh, Dad, my arm hurts." She's a little kid and she's holding, an adult-sized skinning knife. So it's a good workout for her. So we do all of that. And the reason I'm getting chickens actually this week is because I wanted them to be like 9 or 10 weeks old come my man camp week, which would be like the week of June 21st. So one of the workshops that we'll be doing with people is butchering chickens. So I'm going to do 2 days of chicken butchering. And then in my regular work, I'm a welder, fabricator, blacksmith. So I'm always doing that kind of stuff. So, which is a little challenging with my kids running around. But if my wife can take them to do something or keep them occupied, or they can go ride their bikes around the property, I can get some work done. But lately I haven't been working at home. I've been working off site here in a silver mint because we need to get this silver mint going so we can produce a million silver bits a week and get them to the masses. So that's essentially my life. Is my work is different constantly all the time. I got different things I'm working on, but we're pretty consistent all summer long doing farm chores with my kids. No internet devices for my kids. In fact, I've gotten pretty strict with my homeschool families. I am just not having any kids participate in homeschool this year, or even going forward, that are addicted to internet devices or are regurgitating psychobabble, which is this, the kids that are, just, using and watching YouTube and stuff, these, 5, 8, 7-year-old kids. regurgitating, the psychobabble YouTube nonsense, and also they're a distraction. Essentially, we're just not, they're not interested. The kids that are, got TikTok brain aren't interested in doing farm work. They don't get a dopamine hit from it. But
They are
the
not
families,
interesting in they are not interesting in anything. I can sadly observe that in our friends and neighbors and whoever, if they get too much of it, it's like really hard. And it depends on the kid what is too much. And then they just are not interested in anything, basically. Yes,
This is
so
something I apologize. This
no,
is
it's
something
okay.
that I really been supportive of what Jay's been doing. And it was even before he had children, he was doing man camp and teaching people how to forge, towel rack holders, whatever for mom, and actually make something. And I've seen where parents will bring their preteen, teenage daughters also. The girls will come and do it, and what he was emphasizing is that the hit that you get, the dopamine, they understand us in big tech. There was a documentary called Social Dilemma, and it was all about how these tech bros that have these big platforms, they don't let their kids go on the internet because they know they created the platforms to addict them. They know what they're doing. And they go, I'm not doing it to my kid. Do it to your kid, but we're not doing it to my kid. And Jay was always about that hit that you get, that dopamine, that plant, that they control us with, from birth. You can make a blue face with a device in their face. He goes, if they can get that hit from actually accomplishing things, building things, work, from collecting eggs. Well, we did the same thing with our grandkids. Every Monday when they were small, all our grandkids would come over. I'd take off, do a rerun, whatever, and I really embraced what Jay was talking about. That he had his two children and doing it. He does videos, kind of a private Telegram that he has, and we get to see his kids growing up and the co-op of them experiencing this hit. Well, after a while, you grow up. You're 6 years. What do I waste time on a freaking smartphone for? I mean, I'm out getting stuff done, but it has to start very early. And by the time my grandkids get to be like 6 or starting school and they get their devices, you blue face. Grandpa's here. You're not allowed to be blue face, So I think this is fundamental in the liberty community that we understand that we take on what Jay's talking about, because we are creating. I just had a video, we put it up yesterday, and it was about a guy saying that now they have this extra bone growth in the back at the base of your skull in the back. It's a bone spur that's created by people having their head down all the time. And it's like 40-50% of teenagers have this bone spur at the base of their skull from looking down all the time. So I'm like, oh, it's physically changing us. So, and that might even be the intent and part of the solution, raising Generation Next that gets their hits from work and accomplishment and being competent. So I'm very supportive of what Jay's advocating.
And actually, Jay, what you have been talking about, all this, farming and slaughtering the animals, how do the kids do that? Because it's for example, where I am in Norway or in Latvia, that's if you have the possibility to do it, you are really one of the, I don't know, thousands, because nobody usually does it. And especially not themselves, because some places it's not even kind of allowed. You have to send it to someone to do it. So how are the kids at your homeschooling co-op? Is it like natural process for them? No
so
drama, no vegetarians after the slaughter?
it's been an interesting dynamic. So 2 years ago, uh, when we did the chicken butchering, there was like 6 families that showed up, and most of the families had never seen chickens get butchered. Uh, one of the moms, who I'm not going to say her name, but she's like one of the most badass moms I know. She, had no problem getting right in there and doing the work. And she was even a little like, a little grossed out at first. She's like, "Oh, this. I think this is going to be kind of gross or something." And we had like 20 birds left to kill out of like, I don't know, 100. And she's like, "Hey, can I cut some throats?" And I'm like, "Yeah, go for it." And like, she executed it perfectly. She did a really good job. And what I noticed about her is she didn't like squint or like get, squeamish. She didn't even like, she just did it like an assassin, like, just very focused, very good at it. And she's got 4 kids. Her oldest right now is 8, and her youngest is a little over 2. And so all her kids, had no problem with it. They're not grossed out. Her kids have been seeing a chicken butchering operation for 4 years now. Another family, they had a boy and a girl. I think the girl was 6 at the time, and this was the first time she had experienced it. And after, and her mom's right there. Her mom's really good. Her mom's really good at like this animal processing. She grew up hunting and fishing with her dad. She's very handy in these particular when it comes to butcher day. And the 6-year-old daughter was just right in it with her mom after mom was pulling guts out of like the second or third chicken. The 6-year-old kid was right in there with it. And then there was another family. They got 3 kids, and the oldest daughter, I believe, is 12, and the other one, a 7-year-old daughter and a 5-year-old boy. And they were all fine, and they had never like butchered any animals before or anything. They live in the city. They grew up. These kids lived, basically in a city area of New York State. Not far from New York City's where they come from. But their parents are very realistic, and the mom's a registered nurse, so she's like was very, she was going through when we were butchering the chickens, and she's carefully removing the organs from the chickens because she wants to lay them all out on the table, and and she's looking at her phone to figure out, which is which. She had a pretty good idea what the kidneys were, what the liver is, the lungs, and then she has her daughter. I forget which one it was, but one of her daughters, carefully, with kids with little hands are awesome for butchering chickens. When you got big hands like me, you kind of make a mess of the chicken trying to get it, get all the guts out. So she kind of trained, I think it was her 7-year-old daughter. She sort of just, trained her 7-year-old daughter to work everything out so all the organs came out of the chicken all in one piece and not disconnected. And then the kids slowly, and the mom, the nurse mom, she like kind of worked at, taking them all apart and explaining everything to the kids. So it's a very educational too, how all this works. And, the same, and the people who actually have a problem with this are the adults. Like the kids is not a big deal. And then even last year we had a family come. I think they got 5 kids, and the oldest one is 13, a boy. And they had a couple of daughters too. I can't remember all their names, but they were all cool with it. And the dad, the dad was a squeamish one. The mom, not so much, but mom kind of grew up like sort of, but even like if you're a mom and you gave birth and you're like, your kids get bloody when they get accidents and stuff, you kind of get over it, pretty quick. And probably of all the people I've dealt with, the one that this was like the biggest cultural shock for was my wife. My wife didn't grow up on a farm. Her upbringing was, dad was an engineer who went to a cubicle. Mom was a stay-at-home mom, plus she was a hairdresser and had like a little barber, a hair salon basically in the house. And they lived in sort of a suburban neighborhood. They didn't really they had a couple dogs and a couple cats growing up, and never farm animals. But she was when Shallon first butchered chickens, Cypress was 8 months old. Is that right? 6 months old, maybe, in the backpack carrier up at Bardo Farm. We went up to our friends, and as she was, gutting the first, 5 or 6 chickens and cutting the legs off and stuff like that, she was definitely like, oh, this is gross, just kind of like her reaction, she was a little uncomfortable doing it at first, but she got over it, and now she herself is a chicken butchering pro. She still hasn't actually, cut a chicken's, throat. She hasn't killed a chicken. She don't want to do that. She don't want to be anywhere around the pig when the pig's getting butchered. And and same thing with doing the pig is like all the kids want to watch me shoot the pig, and I'm like, nope, I don't even want you guys anywhere near the, because I do it inside of a livestock trailer, and in case there's like a bullet ricochet or something goes wrong, I don't even want the kids around the trailer, for a fragment of a bullet or whatever. I use my 9mm Glock to dispatch the pigs, for example, and a guy trained me real well on that, so I'm pretty good at it. And the most gruesome part is when we pull the pig out of the trailer, and I use either my forklift or my backhoe and wrap a chain around its hind foot and pull it out, and then I take about a 10-12 inch long a Rambo type knife, and I bleed it out by essentially stabbing it just above the breastbone into the heart. And then the pig's hanging, and I can see you're getting squeamish listening to me talking about this, but the pig's hanging, and it just pours gallons of blood out on the ground, and that's how you bleed it out. And then we start gutting them and skinning them and stuff. But the kids is not an issue for it. It's an issue for the parents. In fact, I have not met any kids that were like really grossed out or put off by the actual slaughtering process of any of these animals. But all the so Luke Radowski and Silver Dave. I don't know if you remember Silver Dave. He was at Anarchapulco last year.
Silver Day was there this year as well. I have
Yes.
watched him a bit, and he's also going to be on the Non-Conformist Series, I think.
Right. So 5 or 6 years ago, well, so 2020, Luke Radowski moved up to my property. I had to get out of the city. And Luke and Silver Dave did a bunch of survival apocalypse training courses. And if you go onto Luke's website, wearechange.org, I believe it is, and there's master classes on there that you can subscribe to or buy, or I'm not sure how that really works, but and in those master classes, there's things about survival, and one of the survival apocalypse training things that we did was we had a bunch of couple-year-old laying hens that we bought from a neighbor who's got a commercial egg laying outfit, and we'd buy these laying hens that are for $5 a piece. So we went and bought like 25 or 30 of them, and a bunch of these folks come up from New Jersey and Brooklyn and Southern Connecticut, city folks, and they got to chase around and catch themselves a hen, and then they got to kill it, and then and we skinned them all. We didn't pluck them, and that was pretty interesting. And what was really interesting about that whole deal is these were like all adults that came up, and most of them had never ever done anything like this, and it was like sort of an equal ratio of men to women that came, and like the men were the one that were like having a hard time with it. Like they even a couple of them didn't even complete the job, but like all the women that had done, they were fine. They even some of them were like, "Oh, this is gross. I've never done this before," but like they just did it. But there was like 4 or 5 men that had to like walk away, and then like the lady or some one guy, I remember his girlfriend or his wife like finished processing his chicken. And then there was another guy. He came up by himself, and there was a younger lady who come up with her dad. She was like in her 20s, finished processing his chicken, and then we took half the chickens, and we made a rotisserie over the campfire, and and we cooked them, and the other ones we put on ice and people brought home. But yeah, that was and I've always kind of noticed the women are tougher. Growing up on this horse farm, I grew up on a horse farm as a kid, so most of our clients were essentially young ladies. The 8-year-old girl, grandpa bought them around, or grandma bought a round of riding lessons, like a 6-pack of riding lessons, and they would come, ride horses, and then the money would run out. Mom and dad didn't have the money, so we'd offer these kids basically jobs, cleaning stalls, just doing farm work. There's always a ton of farm work to do. There's no shortage of work to do around any farm in exchange for saddle time or riding lessons or whatever. And it just when it came to even like doing the farm chores, like stacking hay, for example, the girls, they were the last ones stacking hay, and like I would invite kid boys from my football team in high school, and the girls would outwork them, for example, most of them. But
Okay.
women in general are just they're tougher, but they don't have greater muscle or they don't have the bone density, or the physical size as men. But like when it comes to like getting the job done, they are definitely, in my observation, tougher in that like mental aspect of like it starts to hurt. The girls will usually keep on working, but also women are designed to give birth, which is extremely stressful and very and also rewarding at the same time. So that the women need to support life, and men they just they just choose to, most of them, eat Doritos, drink Mountain Dew, and play video games. What it seems
Yeah,
like now.
luckily not
But
all of them.
but
But
back to your
yeah,
question there with so my homeschool, so New Hampshire is very unique. So New Hampshire is also kind of like New York State and even Massachusetts. And in this sort of remark, what I'm going to talk about now is the cultural difference between urban city liberal types, or even urban city Republicans, which don't really exist, or conservatives. It's the guys, they exist a little bit, but not much. But like the people who live in the cities and make sure their kids get all the vaccines and send them to public schools, they're generally not, even in the suburban areas, their kids aren't butchering chickens, their kids aren't collecting eggs. Their kids are part of this data that YouTube Kids put, YouTube for Kids app, like each 3 to 9 year old is using the YouTube Kids app 7 to 9 hours a day, according to these, studies, for example. And then you got kids like my kids and my co-op kids, they don't use any, online internet devices, at all. So the all of the sort of very rural families that homeschool in whether it's Connecticut, New York, Massachusetts, in New Hampshire and Vermont, like they're getting exposure to like the chicken butchering, or at least the animal husbandry. They got like a half a dozen hens or something. Something is going on that is, keeping them sort of connected to the land, connected to nature, connected to animals. They're earning this dopamine hit from collecting the eggs. Like, I like to say that Cypress picked her first job when she was 8 months old, and I had her in the front carrier, and basically Ernie's like, yeah, face her forward, as much as you can in that front carrier, so she's looking at the world. If you got her looking at, facing you the whole time, she's just got her face buried in, in your chest, and she isn't looking at the world. So that's the way I would just present her to the world all the time, is facing forward in the front carrier as soon as she was, old enough to do that. And we'd be riding around in my backhoe, going to feed the pigs. I actually took on 250 piglets that June of 2020, when Cypress was born in February of 2020. And she was strapped to me every day taking care of piglets. So anyways, she's 8 months old, and I open up the chicken coop, and I modified my chicken coop so I could collect the eggs while there was a toddler strapped to me. And then I modified it again to make it toddler friendly once the kids started walking on their own. But I open up the chicken coop door, and in the nesting box, there's like, a dozen eggs or so, all different colors. And as soon as she sees it, she just goes, ah, and just shakes all her arms and all her legs. And like she gets this dopamine hit because she sees those eggs. And that was, very rewarding to her that those eggs were there. And then she just grabs an egg, and I'm holding the egg carton. And I had been doing this with her for months anyways, where I'm grabbing the eggs and putting them in the egg carton, and I'm counting the eggs as I do it. So basically, as soon as my daughter could talk, she could count to 12, no problem, because she'd been listening to me do it, for 2 years almost. And she grabs an egg and she puts it right in the egg carton, and she grabs that second egg and just smashes it right on top of the first egg. And we just laugh about it. And so I had to keep on moving the egg because she was putting all the eggs in the same hole. And we did that for like 3 weeks. She would just keep putting the eggs in the same hole. And then one day, she in the egg cart, and one day she stops me from moving the egg, and she puts the eggs in a different spot and starts, finally starts stacking them. And she, was like 9 or 10 months old when she did, got to that part. So yeah, she's been earning that dopamine hit, so yeah, that's uh, my selfish desire for my homeschool co-op is, I want to make sure that there was useful, valuable, and competent men for my daughter to choose from, when she's in her 20s and ready to find herself a husband. And I figured I would just build them. And so I invited my libertarian friends over, and pretty much everyone who attends our homeschool co-op is free staters. And there's a couple local homeschool families that, they're not really free staters that I attended also. But I figured, I'll just build them. And the way we make men is by, getting them to earn that dopamine hit via skill building as their brain's developing. This first 6 years is like the greatest return on investment, for our kids. So if that answers your question.
Yes, thank you, Jay. The thing we will need to have another episode on New Hampshire and the PorcFest when it comes closer. But now I would like you guys to look a little bit back to Anarchapulco that you mentioned already, Anarchapulco Genesis that was happening in Puerto Vallarta this year. Could you tell a little bit about your experience in Puerto Vallarta this time? Because I don't know about you, Ernest, but I know that Jay, you have been attending Anarchapulco many times before, and you definitely can compare it with how it was in Acapulco to how it was in Puerto Vallarta. What about Ernest? How many times have you been to Anarchapulco?
Was that for me?
Yeah.
I went to the first one. I probably been to uh, 5, 7 of them. I emceed 2 of them, so I'm very familiar with all the people in Acapulco. And this one in Puerto Vallarta, this first time they moved after the hurricane damage and everything in Acapulco. Um, the only thing, Puerto Vallarta went really well. It was very polished and it was comfortable and organized, but it wasn't on the beach. I really liked it when it's on the beach. So hopefully they can get to a beach in Puerto Vallarta this next time. But so I didn't get to go to the beach. I really like having finally relax and go get a table massage on the beach. That's my favorite part. But the from the first one that happened, it's been a finding your tribe. And one thing that I noticed in Acapulco, the majority, probably about half may come from the United States, but a lot of them from around the world. And the one thing that I noticed is that one time when I was emceeing, somebody said to me, they go, there's just nobody from the United Kingdom here. I thought I'd find, I go, are you kidding me? So I get on the stand, I go, everybody from the United Kingdom, raise your hand. Boom. I'm going, there they are, got a third of them. And it was all, if the royalties picture was on their money, it's Canada, South Africa, New Zealand, Australia, UK, for some reason they make it to Anarchapulco. It's amazing how, and we've made a lot of good friends from around. We have good friends from Ireland that we met there. And it's just because you're looking for this type of a tribe, this mindset, and they gather at Anarchapulco. And Jeff Berwick, his Dollar Vigilante group and his videos and so on is what attracted them. They understand that this mindset, this self-sufficiency, this, I'll take care of it and I don't need a bunch of government and them steal all my money. And then, pinky swear they're going to do something for me. I just assume you not service me, like a bull services the herd. I'm tired of getting serviced. So this is a, Puerto Vallarta to me was a refined version of what Anarchapulco had been. If this was their first introduction to this stuff, that was a really good opportunity. And I don't know what then you have the Non-Conformist Series that we participated in at the end of last year. And then we have one coming up this next month that is about surviving the zombie apocalypse, kind of thing. And I'll be doing, some MCM for that. And it's an evolution of not just the philosophy, but the actions that go with it. That the people that are presenting have done it. They are actually living their free life, and they're sharing how and their travels and what they've done. And a lot of people that go to Anarchapulco have money. They got resources to be able to fly halfway across the world to do and go be, and it's important enough to them to go experience that. And a lot of these guys, they go to all the speeches. I mean, they'll plant themselves in the audience, and we're getting learnified, man, from everybody. So it has been a really good example, and then making the presentations available later on for people to watch. And I've seen it because I'm older. I started in my 20s advocating for freedom. And the only way I know how to be free is to advocate it for everyone, support all the good ideas, to be the, cheerleader for, because if you're not having fun, then you're doing it wrong. Nobody's, let's go through the pain of pain. And I already got convenience, and I can push the Amazon button and I get what I want and I go do my slave job. But what they're starting to understand, and what we're advocating, is as you get older, everybody wants to, I'm going to make some money, retire, and go build the cabin in the woods. Well, go build that cabin for you and your family when you're in your 20s. I mean, why wait until, the end to try and be free when you can do it now? And this attitude and these presentations and this gathering of these kinds of people are the encouragement that a lot of people need, and the knowledge to know that the technology, and a lot of times it's old technology. There's nothing he's not, Arduino'd up and got actuators opening up the cage of kind of what, I might be doing that. But, this is, has been the old techniques, the old preserving, the old root cellars, the old medicines, the old plants. This knowledge is there. And I used to wonder, how the hell did humanity survive without antibiotics and NyQuil? I mean, oh my God, this is, and it's just so much medicine, so many more cures, and stop poisoning yourself. And a lot of times I'm just, regardless of whatever plants you get or growing, Donna and I eat as much as we can out of her garden. And, we get plenty of meals just from her growing. And we got the hen house up now. We got everything. We haven't got our chickens yet. And we used to have up to 70 chickens. And it was, and we went through the same thing. Our grandkids come, first thing they do, got to go get the eggs. Got to go pick some oranges for Papa Juice. Got to go, whatever. And I've seen it. I have seen it. And it is, the future is very promising. And the technology that they're offering is not a tool for us as much as it is an enslavement. And if you can bypass that and understand the philosophy and what you're trying to do to keep breathing in and out and prosper and raise generation next, if that's your focus, then you can see that you can have technology and, as tools. I mean, hell, just to get tools. So this is, I'm really encouraged for my grandchildren's generation. And that's why the logo on Freedom's Phoenix, from the ashes of Lady Liberty's torch, Freedom's rebirth, Freedom's Phoenix. And we're going through the ashes now. And we knew it was coming. We always knew it was coming, but it was the end of 19. I was visiting, back east, Massachusetts and New Hampshire. My friend Bob and I were back there doing some stuff on his family home that he had inherited. His mother died. And we were back there, got to meet Jay and everybody, and they got introduced to Bob. But we went and saw the movie Joker with Joaquin Phoenix. This is like October, November of 19. And I'm like, what the hell was that? That you could feel the predictive programming of mind screw of what. And then COVID hit, the summer of 20. Portland's on fire. It's kind of, it's just, this is all programmed. This is all on purpose. This is all, I want everybody to know why they need us, says the government, And all of these efforts that are emphasized with the Non-Conformist Series, Anarchapulco, what Jay's doing, what we advocate, all of that, Liberty Community are the ones that are going to survive. And I remember we were there when Luke was there during 20. We were working on the bus, getting it ready. And what happened was, you could see someone that had been, Luke had been locked down in Brooklyn for, ever. And he, kind of, got learnified, manned up at Jay's. And during that time, you could see that the only event that there was Anarchapulco. That's why I emceed those a couple years during COVID, because I wanted to make sure it you got help and somebody was supporting, and I'm perfectly willing to do it. And Porcupine Freedom Festival, our Jackalope Freedom Festival we have here, these were the only things that were going on. They shut down everything, even Burning Man. A lot of the people from Burning Man went to Jackalope during COVID, and I'm just like, Burning Man shut down, man. You guys, you're killing me. This is, it's an attitude. And once you get off the tit of government or seeking the concept of, I got to get a permission slip, I get a permit from the crown to live, you have to make that break. Once you do that, then you start to understand that not only can you do it yourself, and there's good tech for that. I mean, hell, once satellite hit and Starlink, that was the last box that needed to be checked. And it's we have a quality life here. I enjoy every day. I get up. I have beautiful sunsets, beautiful sunrises, nice days here. It's it's like 80 for weeks and weeks and weeks as a high, and 56 at night, and rarely rains here. You got to get ready to capture all that. But it's just been an enjoyable life. But it requires a mindset or a certain personality. And a lot of that, like Jay's saying, who are your kids going to marry? I mean, if you got to build a husband for your daughter, well, you do that. And that's what Jay's doing. So, power to you. So this has been a really good and encouraging experience. But lately, I just did James Corden and I do a show every other week for years. And I was just this last Wednesday complaining. I was kind of in the doldrums on this thing, and I'm seeing what's happening now. What's happening now is a lot of the alternative media, a lot of the the talk shows, the podcast, and so on. Now it's coming out. We were right, and then everybody's counting coup. They went, yep. See, we were right. Told you so, Dion. I told you so. Told you so. Told you so. And I'm going, They get that vented out, and then they're done. And I'm going, then what? What's the solutions? How are you living your life? What are you doing? I mean, you're going around counting coup on the man, saying, we told you this was going to happen. Precious metals were going to do this. Inflation was going to do that. CBDC, surveillance of whatever. And it's become GoldmanSachs.gov coin, for Bitcoin or whatever. So I'm seeing humanity, and the very place that it's starting to spark up are things like PorcFest, like the Free State Project, like Anarchapulco, like the Non-Conformist Series. This is bubbling up what the future can be. And we're going to be up against those that, no, you're not allowed to be an inspiration or, go after it. And we see the attacks. They arrest a lot of, the crypto guys. You have the man showing up with clipboards and, always available gun behind them. And they're going, oh, what about the children? And they see your children as your weak point. Oh, child protective, you're doing it wrong. So we run into that. So that requires a community to fight back. And this has been an important part of inspiration for people to understand not only can it be done, they're better people for having done it. You get a lot more sense of confidence. You go to bed less worried. And worry to me is a sign you need to do something. Well, we've been doing it, and we associate with those that are doers. And then we help each other. Well, this is how I did it, and what things we got. And things like the 10th ounce silver. That's a very important thing I can see, because we're silver diamond all over the place. But now they have, you can tell Silver Dave, Don and I watched their video last night that they did. The new dimes, don't have the olive branches of peace. They now got the bird on the back, with the bash of the arrows, man. We're gonna do some war. And I'm like, man, it's all these subtle things. They're demonstrating what they're about. So I'm encouraged, but this is now when the work happens. And these shows and podcasts that are now the Iran war, and so I see them, just, oh, we got something new to talk about. How bad, focus on that and the next tragedy porn that they do, and the next, and it's an opportunity to educate us and make people aware and inform and inspire them that there's a solution, and the solution is not that. It's create your own community, elevate your own skills. And during COVID, there was a lot of people that took the time that they had, or they got subsidy, or they give a stimulus check or whatever. They're just, I get more blue face and spend more time on YouTube, or they're learning new skills. They're getting, up on, AI or making graphics, or designing home. They learned something. And those are the people that are going to survive and thrive. It's not just about, just maintaining breath. It's being productive and add to your community. Don't be a subtraction. Don't show up saying, I'm an anarchist, take care of me, feed me. No, you got to carry your own weight. You got to be an add to your community. Jay's a big add. So this has been a confirmation of my bias that humanity will keep on marching on, given whatever challenge, they'll rise to it. They just need to understand it. They need to understand that you are to be harvested, your livestock. And once you realize that, hopefully you'll make decisions to change. Now, the next nonconformist that's coming up, we have a use case out here for communication and for building. We're like, look, we're doing it. And those that got good ideas, let's have them on, let's do it. So I'm looking forward to this nonconformist series coming up this next month, because I need to glean, and how I'm going to present it. My plan is you do the intros and then the outros, what we just learned, what we did, as a teaching opportunity for me. What can I use, or what they talked about on our land? How are we doing it? And those people that are doing, of course, share. So this is going to be outpost of freedom that is an example and inspiration. It's like, yeah, okay, I'm done with this, this government thing. You're not going to vote yourself free. So we're going to go ahead and take care of it ourselves, because what's coming, it's going to get really bad. That was my dismay when it got to where it was obvious what was happening. The liberty community has been right. We understand what the real incentives and goals are of these people. And then to do it and offer a solution for it is better than just getting more clicks because you get to count coup and say you were right. So this is important, that we have this conversation and we understand what is it you say you do here. Well, the main thing is what Jay's talking about, to raise generation next. And what traits do you want them to have? They know how to use apps. This is not life affirming. We need life. Kind of like Ayn Rand, when she was like, you're anti-life, she wasn't talking about abortion or anything. What she was talking about is the collectivist mindset, the things that you're a harvester. You're going to be a parasite on humanity, or you're just going to live and inspire and encourage others to live their fullest life. So if you're pro-living, pro-life, pro-freedom, that's what affirms life, is freedom. When you start enslaving, you're sucking the life away, which is why we have a site we just opened, libertas.earth. That's the root word for liberty in Latin. Libertas.earth is the philosophy of liberty that's translated into 54 languages. And we just got this completed to where anywhere in the world you can advocate for, in whatever language, that the philosophy of liberty is about self-ownership. And once you get that splinter in your mind from the beginning, all this other stuff flows through it. And how I know that is the thousands of interviews that I've done over the decades, is that I always ask why people were this way. Why are you liberty oriented? Why are you advocating? Why? What happened? What grandma, uncle, employer, coach, somebody, created spontaneous desire for whatever. What did that? Well, I read The Road to Serfdom or an Ayn Rand thing or Rothbard. I go, why? Why did you go down that road? Right? Well, there was this animation, this video so this philosophy of liberty thing that came around in the early 90s. And what happened was Ken School, an economics professor, an economist, Austrian, went to Washington, D.C. No, this ain't the cure. Screw this. And he became a professor in Hawaii. And he wrote a book called The Adventures of Jonathan Gullible, which was just about free market solutions in a humorous way for, the young and so on. And he went to Russia in the early 90s. In 1993, he had his tour guide, which is now a billionaire grocer, so there's that. But he said, this needs to be, we just came out of the Soviet Union. We're all communist up, man. We don't know what you're talking about. Property rights, what the hell is that, So we need a primer for this book and translate it into Russian, and we'll print it. But we need to have some kind of an understanding of what the hell you're talking about. So he wrote this, the philosophy of liberty, about self-ownership thing. And there was an activist in Canada, a guy that went by Lux Luker, and he helped us when we first started doing radio back in 03, doing, MP3 editing and stuff. Well, what happened, he took that and made a flash animation, which was high tech, but it might as well have been AI back in the early 90s. So he made this animation and it just went worldwide and got translated now 54 languages. But it was Russian. That was the first one. And the reason I thought, people keep going, it was this video that kind of got my mind right. And it happened to James Corbett. That's what sent him down this Freedom Road in 07. So I'm going, okay, we need to resurrect this because we used it a lot. It had a big impact on us advocating for this and getting that splinter in the mind. So we're going, okay, we need to make sure all the translations are done, make it a useful thing for each language, have the banner ads available for it, the QR codes that go to the IPFS version of it so it can't be deplatformed or deleted or whatever. And then we put it on a bunch of other platforms as well. But this is the base fundamental philosophical understanding of what this is all about. And it's been enormously effective. We had it translated into Arabic because it wasn't during Arab Spring, and we dumped 4,000 DVDs on Tahrir Square in their PAL format, for watching on DVD, and it exploded. It just boom all over the Middle East. Well, we got DDoS by Mossad out of Germany, and then we tracked back to what they're. Oh hell no, they don't want this out. You ask AI, oh yeah, it's been around since 13. It's been seen like 15,000 times. Hell, I've watched it that many times. So they're doing everything they can to suppress this basic fundamental understanding of what this is all about. So we have resurrected that to make sure it's a tool for people to use, libertas.earth. And it's not monitored. I don't care about metrics. I don't look at the comments on these different platforms. I don't care. It is a mechanism by which you can get people to understand the foundational reason for what all this is about. And that is the kind of thing that we're looking to do. And you can't alter it. You can't deplatform it. You can't using interplanetary file sharing that we store all of our stuff on, because I got so sick on Freedom's Phoenix. I'd have this great video, I'd really make a point, man, it's deleted. I'm going, no. We gotta have, now you don't get as many metrics, but it's always there. And it's up to us to share. So this has been our goal. We're always looking, we do our own newspapers, our own e-zine, there's all kinds of activism that we do, but it's the one thing that you own yourself. And when you find out that this is what has inspired and sparked a lot of people, well, you do more of it. You want to make sure people have the splinter in their mind that they understand something's wrong. What is it? What's the solution? Well, America was a solution. That was the promise. That's why my show is Declare Your Independence with Ernest Hancock, is because the Declaration of Independence made it clear the purpose of government. The only reason you even have one, and it says, to protect individual rights. If it doesn't do that, it's time to alter or abolish. It's your right. It's your duty. Well, shit, sign me up. This is the promise that they made, and the bad guys got in charge because they can. That is the problem that we've had. You created a shiny badge, and the bad guys want it, and they're using it, and they're beating us over the head with it. And these conversations, this philosophy has been, argued and answered, for millennia, but certainly in the beginning of America's history, that was the promise. Now, of course, bad guys, jump in and take over, and I'm in charge now, and I got the shiny badge and tell you what to do. But the promise, even in the most communist countries, when they have a coup or something, they take over. Oh, we're here. We're going to give you more freedom. Yeah, we're the good guys. Sorry, we let these guys bother you so long. But then they turn bad, as well. But it's always the promise. This is what people want. They want freedom, and why they're gravitated to the U.S. They get here and find out it's not relatively a lot freer than other places, but it's still going down the same trajectory. And that's why I'm here. This is what we're advocating for. This is what we want to inspire people with. This is what we want to demonstrate you can do. And you don't have to be the pioneer in the Conestoga wagon and the Lone Prairie of, oh my God, where's my next meal? Because we have the technology and the knowledge and the communication to share solutions. Well, I'm very happy. I am probably feel more secure, more comfortable, more fulfilled now at 65 out in the middle of the desert than I had my entire life. And this is the goal. And we're enjoying it. We're building something for our children and grandchildren for them to enjoy in the future and as a refuge. Now, this is what, why it's a hub for Jay. Jay emphasizes this inspiration, this example to Generation Next. I'm a big Jay fan, if you can't tell. So, this is such a good example of us sharing, and the knowledge has been accumulated by all these presentations over the decade at Anarchapulco. These are the people that have been curated and selected that come and inspire and show them that not only can you do it, but why. Nobody asks why anymore. Why are you doing it? Why? And when I found out that in November, I was interviewing a young man from Uganda. And in Africa, I'm going, why are you, and eventually it came down to the Philosophy of Liberty video. Once you implant that seed, once you, at a young age, you grow up getting your dopamine hits from actually producing and working and so on, it sticks. And which is why they, them, those won't leave us alone. Who are they, you conspiracy? Those who just want to be left alone, those won't leave them alone. That's my dividing line. Are you leave me alone, or not? And what they're doing is they're trying to separate your connection to natural law, your connection to your community, your connection to what this is all about, your connection to the promise of leave you aloneism. Once we emphasize that and demonstrate it's a better way of living, who's happier during COVID, especially the Amish, or Manhattan? I mean, it's so simple that what we're on this earth to accomplish is our own self-interest and Generation Next. This has been so fundamental in everything that we do, and I'm glad to see it starting to happen. But what I don't like is that everybody, that gets metrics up on, they're making a living on their YouTube, and they're going, we were right, you were wrong. Yeah, now what? How do we keep this from happening? How do we keep that? How do we inspire Generation Next to make these kinds of choices? And the first thing is get them off the freaking devices, quit being all blue-faced and raised by, freaking Facebook. I'm just saying. So that's my rant.
Thank you, Ernest. Jay, what has your experience been at Anarchapulco? And already Ernest mentioned what he's going to be doing during the Non-Conformist series. He's going to be emceeing. What is your speech going to be about on the Non-Conformist series? But start with Anarchapulco first, please.
All right, just remind me the second question about my presentation. So Anarchapulco this year was interesting. So I thought I was going to Anarchapulco. I thought I was going to be doing a presentation. I thought I was going to be the auctioneer. And everybody really liked my auctioneering the year before. They thought that was a lot of fun. And a couple of weeks before, or I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks before Anarchapulco, I sent Kat a message. I'm like, hey, you having me or whatever? She's like, no, we don't have you on a schedule. So I was like, all right, I guess I'm not going. and they were, changing some things up. And so, anyways, I
From that
wasn't.
fan
I
and
figured I wasn't
motor
going.
commissioner.
And Shallon was, hey Laura, can you click the
No,
thing so
this
it
air
shows me?
conditioner.
I don't know if that how that really works, but
I think it is.
okay, it goes on whoever's talking.
Yes.
Oh, all right. I don't know. It doesn't seem to put me out there on the
I
thing.
see you. I see
Oh,
you.
okay. So,
Yeah.
anyways, it I didn't think I was going, and then I'm working down here at the Silver Mint, working on the factory, getting a new factory going, doing a bunch of welding and fabrication work, and Silver Dave's like, "Hey, do you want to go to Anarchapulco?" I'm like, "Yeah." He says, "You want to go down there and represent local Silvermen? I'll buy your ticket." And you know, I had got my own Airbnb. I split it with my friend Colin, which actually we had a really convenient Airbnb. It was right across the street from the convention center, so we did. Colin and I didn't have to take a taxi, and it was in like real authentic local Mexican living, so that was cool too. Anyways. So yeah, I'm one of those guys that I've been trying to go to Anarchapulco for years, but it wasn't until be 3 Anarchapulcos ago that I got invited. Anarchapulco gave me tickets, put me up in housing. They paid for a good chunk of my airfare, so me and my family could come. They made it very good for me 2 years in a row, and then last year, Silver Dave essentially paid my way there. Local silver mint, and we went down there to sell the. My our intent was to get bullion depositors because we want to come up with 50,000 ounces of silver on deposit so we can make a million silver bits a week and get them out to the world. And if anybody wants to check into our silver bullion deposit program, localsilvermint.com /BDA. Use J as a reference on that. And that's where local silver mint pays you 5% per year in silver ounces. So I've actually had pretty much most of my silver deposited with local silver mint for several years now. And, 20 years ago, I had a 2,000 ounce stack of silver. And if I had, deposited that in local silver mint's vault, if it was that was available to me 20 years ago, at 5% compound cumulative interest, that would be 5,400 ounces of silver today. And also 250 ounces of that silver I had 20 years ago disappeared. I'm pretty sure I know who took it. But anyways, it's another story. Then, because it's hard to secure your own silver. And yeah, I'm not one of these, these big dollar high roller big ballers that, has all kinds of money to spend and get down to Anarchapulco. So I've, because I have value and, they want to present, what I got to say, I got to go down there. And also because I have value to the Silver Mint, I got to go. So it was challenging. I missed my flight, my second connector flight. So I had a flight from Boston to Atlanta. My Boston flight got delayed because of there wasn't enough flight attendants. There were one flight attendant short on the flight, which is just garbage, I think. It's one of these union contract things with the flight attendants. So they delayed our flight 4 hours, and then I had to buy a whole nother flight. So I get down to Atlanta, and then I had to buy another flight. It was like $1,600 to get from Atlanta to Puerto Vallarta. Had to spend a night in Houston. I got there a day late. I didn't get there on Sunday. I got there on Monday morning. And then when I got there, I noticed you weren't there, Laura.
No.
Gustav and Elizabeth weren't there. And I said to your husband, Christoph, I'm like, hey, where's your family? Oh, they couldn't make it, this, that, the other thing. And there was a whole bunch of other families that I noticed dad was there, but mom and the kids weren't there. And same thing, people were asking me, hey, where's your wife and kids? I'm like, ah, they couldn't make it. It wasn't, happening. And so uh, I ended up meeting up with the dentist there. Yalin is her name. I forget her. I should really throw her some credit here, but she did I got an NAD plus infusion Monday, first thing at Anarchapulco, which was really awesome. I don't know if you know what NAD plus is, but it was an IV infusion that was made me feel good. It supercharges the mitochondria in your cells. And then I made an appointment to get my wisdom teeth on Monday pulled. I made an appointment on Monday, and I got my rotted wisdom teeth pulled on Saturday. So, anyways, we had a great time at Anarchapulco. I talked to everybody there about bullion deposit. I did a whole presentation at kids camp on Tuesday. I called it Silver Stacking 101 for kids. I did a 45-minute presentation. It ended up taking me an hour and a half. In fact, the only reason I left is I had an alarm clock set on my phone because I had to go meet up with somebody else about a bullion deposit deal. And the response I got was really awesome from my kids' presentation at Anarchapulco. So what I did is I went down there with 100 silver bits, 10 ounces of silver, 100 of these 1/10 ounce bits. And there was 13 kids in the kids camp room that qualified for the silver to get silver bits. And my qualifications were the kid could say the word silver or they were under 18 years of age. So that worked out well. And there was 13 kids, so 100 silver bits roughly divided by 13 was 7 bits per kid. And what I did is I brought some examples, like of some funny money, the $1 trillion Zimbabwe notes. We talked about how the Federal Reserve just prints money out of thin air, whether it's a $100 bill or a $1 bill or a $1 trillion bill. It costs the same amount of paper and ink to print it, about 1/20th of a cent. Is so for every penny, you can make 2,000, $2,100 bills or $2,500 bills or whatever you want, or whatever they want, not what we want. So they are these guys have essentially a letter of marque to be counterfeiters, the Federal Reserve, from what I gather. And so then I presented, about silver versus US dollar versus fiat. I gave them a good education on it. I recommend they check out, the book, The Creature from Jekyll Island, written by G. Edward Griffin. And I also encourage them to trade with silver. So what I did with the kids, I said, hey, I'm going to give each one of you kids 1 silver bit. But in order for you to get to 1 silver bit, I am going to, I want you to, when you go home, to spend these other silver bits. So I gave them 6 other silver bits. These other silver bits to go home and spend them at a local farmer's market or a mom and pop shop. And I explained that they need to do some role play with their parents. And there was only 3. The kids camp was really awesome at Anarchapulco because they had some staff there, and the staff were pretty reasonable and trustworthy. And nobody seemed like they were woke or predatory. They were just good, warm people. And I had actually met I had met the guy and one of the girls last year at Anarchapulco, and the other woman that was there staffing it. I didn't meet her before, but they were good. So of these 13 kids, there was only 2 parents in the actual presentation because it was a pretty sweet setup, at that location. And so the reason I went an hour and a half is I did my 45-minute presentation, and I have a hard time saying no to anybody, so the kids just kept asking me questions, and we had really, really good dialogue. So I'm so I go back the next day, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Every day, a mom or a dad came up to me and they're like, wow, you did a really awesome presentation. My son told me all about it the other night. He's so excited to go home, to go to a farmer's market and spend silver bits. And so the idea is I called it spreading the silver bug. And I want you to take this silver from Puerto Vallarta, Mexico, go home to wherever you are. And it was kids from Europe. It was kids from New Zealand. Christoph Matizadek's son and daughter were both in the presentation. They were very happy. I got good feedback from Christoph and his wife, Elena. I think that's how you thinks what her name is. And they're going to New Zealand when they go home, and another kid was going to Australia, and I forget. There was definitely a Canadian, some kid going to Canada. And actually, half the kids that were one thing that was cool about being in Puerto Vallarta is there's so many Anarchapulcoans who just live in Puerto Vallarta anyways. I think that's what really made that event awesome is because for example, you probably remember Alex and Warren Banks. So I stayed
Yes.
with them actually after Anarchapulco. And so their son Andrew, and their daughter were both there, and they each got some silver bits, as part of the presentation. And they were going to go to a local farmers market or local. They have a Saturday market somewhere around Puerto Vallarta where it's like a flea market and a bunch of vendors, and try to use the plata or the silver. And plata is Spanish.
Have you, Jay, actually heard back from some of the kids or any of the kids about did they actually manage or did they try
Yes.
to,
Well, I heard back
yeah.
from parents. So I have
Yeah.
had parents reach back out to me from via email and Telegram that yes, that they were able to the one father what country is he from? English is his second language. He's somewhere in Europe. I can't remember what country. Uh, and that was his first Anarchapulco. He was there with him, his wife, and they had like a 7-year old and like an 18-month-old. And he emailed me and couldn't believe how easy it was to use the silver bits. And the silver bits were worth like $7.50 US, $75 an ounce, and they were able to like buy like a $12 equivalent something at this trade market he called it. It sounded like it was a flea market kind of thing they went to, and he was very impressed that they were able to get such a really good deal on the items they were buying with the silver. But anybody who knows anything about silver knows that it is impossible to buy silver for spot, especially fractional silver. So you go look at like 1/10 ounce silver on like JM Bullion, for example, or SD Bullion, or any of these big bullion online distributors, and it's like double spot. And like local silver mint silver, if you go on our website and you buy just 10 ounces of silver at localsilvermint.com, it is about like right around 20% over spot if you look at the actual price to buy 10 ounces of silver. And you can buy it for like 12% over spot, I believe. Please don't quote me on that 12%. I could be a little wrong. If you buy like 500 ounces. And that might be a little limited until we get our factory online. Right now, we're still in our old silver producing facility, and we're producing 25,000 bits a week. And when a new and we're selling it all at our retail store, anyways. So that being said, the presentation I did went over really well, and I just got to like do fellowship and just hang out and chat with so many people that I wouldn't have been able to talk to because my kids are just totally all over me, all the time. You see how they are. Anytime I'm talking to somebody, they see whoever I'm talking to as competition for my attention. So, they make sure that they, get right in there and start climbing on me and stuff. So it was actually good my kids didn't come for that reason. I got a lot of work done. We got some folks to do bullion deposit, which was good. People bought silver off us. In fact, there was a handful of people that came to Anarchapulco that their kids are at home, and they were like, "Can I buy some silver bits off you?" I'm like, "Nope, you can't buy any." We didn't bring a lot of silver bits with us. We ended up so I was like, yeah, I'm only giving them away, and that's what I was doing. We were giving some silver bits away, and I said, there's only one way you qualify. Do you have kids that are old enough to say silver, but under 18 years of age? So I sent people home with silver bits. So yeah, a woman from Missouri actually called me that I became friends with, and she did this at a farmer's market like a week ago. Uh, I guess about a week ago, yeah, with her kids, and she said it went really smooth doing a silver transaction. And the idea with the kids doing it is like when I go up and try to trade silver with somebody, it doesn't go so smooth. But when you have a kid, especially like Cypress, we started doing it with Cypress when she was 3. I'm like, Cypress, here, take these 1/10, and it was before the silver bits was a product, but it was these 1/10 ounce silver bars actually. that Dave was producing, Silver Dave was producing. And I send her to the farmers. We're at the farmers market here in, where I live in Henniker, New Hampshire. And I'm like, honey, you can buy anything you want except for candy if you can get the farmer to accept this silver. So she ran right over to the lady who's got the sheep's milk gelato. And, she spent essentially 3 silver bits 3 years ago at, $25 silver to buy this, $12 cup of, or $10 cup of gelato made from this lady's sheep. And so that lady who does the sheep's milk gelatos, definitely stacked up some silver the last couple of summers at the farmers market, because both of my kids wanted to get ice cream. That's their favorite thing at the farmers market. And they just had no problem taking it from the kids. So the idea with this silver bug thing is to get people to exercise the silver economy before everything melts down, before the fiat goes hyperbolic, inflation. So when these farmers, like at my local farmers market here, when I got my kids and my wife, I'm like, yeah, you guys can get anything you want if you can convince them to buy silver. My wife wants to buy some earrings or something from some crafter. I'm like, yeah, go ahead. If they will accept silver, sure, get whatever you want. So these vendors are taking silver now that they got this silver in their hand or in their pockets or in their, vaults or whatever. It's part of their financial asset. Now they're curious about silver and they're Googling silver and they're looking up silver bits. And then we're talking about, and my daughter's like, well, don't you want real money? This stuff's just paper. And she thinks it's hilarious when like everyone, so at every farmer's market, you got the sort of the college kid there with the septum ring and the blue hair who's, got a job, she's selling the corporate jelly and the, jam in the mason jar with some sticker they generated and threw on there. You could, it always kinds of seems like there's a sort of a, a little bit not really a farmer selling stuff at farmer's market. And, they got their Apple Pay and their Square thing and they can take your card and, they don't even want to talk to you about silver or gold backs or any of this stuff. They're just, they're just there to do their, $10 an hour job. And so when my daughter says, hey, I want to get some of this, whatever you got, to that kind of, vendor at the farmer's market, and they're like, oh, no, we only accept money, is what one girl says to my daughter. And my daughter's like, oh, you mean those paper things? Or she goes, or you can swipe your card. And my daughter's like, well, paper's not money. Silver's real money. Paper is currency. And she's like, what do you mean swipe a card? How do you get money from swiping a card? Because, my daughter doesn't understand the concept of swiping a card. And so it's pretty funny to like, and my daughter doesn't get offended. She starts laughing at these people because they don't know what money is. And and even if you go to a local Silverman YouTube page about 6 months ago, there's a video that says, and I should send you the link to this so you could put this up there, but it's a really adorable video of my daughter Cypress cashing in her piggy bank for silver bits. And she did really good because silver was about $40. It was right as it was ramping up. And in one part of the video, Silver Dave does a transaction with her, and Dave's like, oh, there's a $20 bill she has in there. And she's like, Dave's like, are you sure you want to convert this $20 into silver? And she goes, yeah. And Dave's like, why do you want to do that? And she goes, because that $20 is paper and silver's real money. And so this is, how I've been grooming my kids for since they could communicate and talk. So the idea is and I sort of give this like spiritual intention when I give people a silver bit. I'm like, do you have any silver? And they're like, no, I don't have any silver. I'm like, all right, here's a silver bit. Here you go. I just give it to them. And I says, and I say to him, I want to set this intention that this silver is magical, and all silver has a superpower. And if you keep this silver bit, it's going to attract more silver, and you will get more silver. And I tell people every time you're offered silver and you have the opportunity to get silver, trade and transact in silver, because the biggest problem in the world, and I would recommend that people go back and buy the the Anarchapulco replays, and probably a lot of people who watch this podcast have bought the Anarchapulco replays. And if you do go by the Anarchapulco replays, please use coupon code Jay, and you'll get 10% off. And that's a way you can support me. And on Friday, right before Jeff's talk, Silver Dave did his presentation about the world's biggest problem. And I'm going to give a quick summary on that, but you should really watch Dave's presentation. He does a really good job laying this out because, Dave, he was in the Special Forces, Green Beret. And so he basically learned that, the government is just, using their power to print money to destroy people's lives and to run drugs from Afghanistan to Europe and the US. So there's a whole bunch of problems. Like, just think if most of the families have a loved one that's a heroin addict, well, then they're not paying attention to the politicians, and that gives the politicians ultimate power when the people are distracted because, one kid's on heroin and the other kid's autistic, for example. There's a lot of that going on here in this country, and this is what gives the politicians power. So the biggest problem in the world is that, quite literally, the people who print the money just print the money out of thin air. And they don't even print money hardly anymore. Like, not even a fraction of the money that is quote unquote in circulation is even being printed. It's mostly all digital. And the thing is the people who print the money, they pay for all the universities, they buy all the education, they control all the content in the public schools, they fund all the public schools. They make sure they have all the teachers and everything locked in because they're all slaves to their pension, essentially. They're all working for this pension and they're all going to fight to keep this pension, scam going. And they also buy the politicians, and the people who print the money fund the both sides of every single war. And literally, since they've been printing money, and they don't care who wins or loses the war because they're going to collect the debt and enslave the people of those countries to pay off the debt of who wins and loses. In fact, generally, the winners of the war have, it's been America's been winning all these wars over the years, and America has more debt than all these other countries in the world, from what I could tell. So they're actually the biggest loser. So the idea is, we can't fight the money changers. We can't walk up to them and punch them in the face because we don't even know who they are. We can't even identify them. There's speculation of who they are, but we really don't know who owns and controls the Federal Reserve. And they're very protected. And and just like who's the guy? Ben Stone, the Bad Quaker, badquaker.com. There's a book that he has. It's called Subversion, Sedition, and Simple Sabotage, a 3-part manual to dismantling the state. And what he talks about it in there is you can't walk up to the state and punch it in the face because they'll just kill you. You'll end up in a body bag. But one of the things you can do is you can leave Legos out on the floor so when the state wakes up in the middle of the night to go take a leak, it steps on the Legos and then it falls down and brings up to his knees. So the only way we can fight the people who print the money is to not fight them, but to make them irrelevant, to not use their currency, and to trade outside of their essentially of outside their currency. So I think the greatest activism we could do is saving our own communities. The way you save the world, none of us can individually save the world, but we can all save our own communities, and we can do a lot of saving our own communities quite simply by starting our own micro markets. So if you go to localsilvermint.com, there is a micro markets link on the top of the page, micro silver markets. In fact, I'm going to hold a business card up to the screen. If I was a little more prepared, this would work. But let's see here. So that QR code right there, if people scan that QR code, I'll try to hold it straight here. That is for our local micro markets. So the idea of spreading the silver bug is to start these micro markets all over the world, all over the country. And I built a pretty good micro market here in New Hampshire on silver already, but I've been trading in silver at least since 2001 because I put an ad in a local want advertiser. I used to be a hay dealer. I bought and sold hay for horses mostly. And I put an ad in the paper, hay for sale, 25 cents a bale if you pay in pre-1964 silver coin. And I got 5 guys that responded to that. And I got paid in eagles. I got paid in tubes of dimes. I got paid in tubes of quarters, tubes of halves. One guy paid me in a whole bunch of uh, I forget what year they are, but they're 35% silver nickels. I got a couple cases of those from a transaction, 20 years ago. And so anyways, the the and part of, also silver, saving, our local community is my man camp deal. Like anybody can sort of replicate what I'm doing. Like man camp started as blacksmithing for me. If you go to my website, jnoone.com, it's like 4 years old, all the stuff on there, but it talks about the blacksmithing, I'm doing at PorcFest. So now back to Anarchapulco. So I did the silver bug thing. I got really good responses from that, and actually, a few people have ordered. One family goes, "Oh, my kids have so much fun doing that." I actually they said that they ordered 10 ounces of silver bits off of our website, and so they could go do more trading in silver at the local farmers market. And the thing is, if people are prepared and already doing silver trade and understand about trade, now they're just way more prepped and prepared for this essential, financial meltdown that has to happen. I don't see how it can't. And I think what's really going to make it happen is the introduction of central bank digital currencies. Because when they introduce the CBDCs, which I'm actually fully supportive of CBDCs, because I think CBDCs need to come, that will be the final straw that breaks the camel's back, that tears this system down. It's the only reason I, support it, because we need a correction. So I think the correction will come with CBDC, because I believe that the people who are the money printers who are behind this are so effing greedy that when the CBDCs come into play, then the hyperinflation is going to just happen like crazy, and you're going to get a massive bifurcation. I'm not getting, a chip in my, hand, or a mark on my forehead or anything like that for the purpose of trading. And also, I've put myself in a position where I'm pretty darn valuable to my local community, that I'm not going to have to, submit to this. Plus, I have been trading with so many people in silver. Oh, I wanted to say real quick. So 2026, I have bought all my heat and oil with silver. I have bought all my grain. The last 3 times I bought grain for my animals with silver. I bought my hay last summer with silver. I pay my chiropractor in silver. We have a local steel mill here in New Hampshire called Cohen Steel. They're in Concord. I've been paying them for silver. I'm a welder fabricator. I've been buying a bunch of my metals there to do my work, and I've been paying them in silver. I have a local hardware store that they're actually looking into and working on. It's a mom and pop hardware store. They're looking into and working on putting into their point of sale system so they can accept silver bits and half-ounce silver pieces and 1 ounce silver pieces, and they can give change in either bits or give change in dollars or whatever. Because the biggest problem with like the guy who owns a retail location, he has someone operating a cash register, is they need to make the silver transaction really simple, and just your cash register kind of needs to do it all. So that's pretty exciting. That's going to happen. And here's the thing. It's pretty much only mom and pop operations that are going to accept silver. The corporate stuff isn't. And I'm hopeful that the economy gets to a point to where massive corporations like Walmart and, Raytheon and, Cargill and JBS, JBS is the biggest, slaughterhouse in the US, or basically the biggest pork processors in the world. I like the economy so these places cannot even function, to where it's like forced that everything is quite literally, you know, has to be local. I'm very looking forward to that. So uh, that was kind of a big thing at Anarchapulco was the getting that silver micro markets idea pushed, and a lot of people really liked it. Now,
Jay, I need to interrupt you here because we will need to wrap up soon. And if you could share what you're going to be talking on the upcoming Non-Conformist Series? Are you going to be talking about the silver mint, or is
Nope,
it
I'm going to be talking about my personal introduction to the year of the fire horse.
okay?
The fire horse year comes every 60 years, and it started February 17th. And then I was with a family, in a neighborhood sort of that was, not the beachfront, five-star hotels. It was like where the common folk live. And February 22nd, at 8:30 in the morning, we heard the automatic gunfire that was 4,000 feet away from the house I was staying in. It was at the military depot. And then we heard, and we went up on the roof of the house, which is, in Mexico, the roofs of the houses are kind of like the patios. And we went up on the roof of the house, and at 8:30 in the morning, there was just plumes of smoke, dozens of them, all around us. The entire horizon from north to south and to the east, and then eventually the west. A little while later, all had smoke plumes because the cartel had sent like dozens or hundreds. I don't know how. I don't have a good number of buses and cars on fire all throughout Puerto Vallarta because they killed El Mencho. And El Mencho died, 5 days into this particular fire horse year, and he was actually born July 17th, 1966, which was the last fire horse year. And the thing with people who were born during the fire horse year, they're known as extremely powerful in Chinese, astrology. And one of the things that all of us anarchists understand is, with great power becomes great responsibility, and with absolute power generally, means that they become absolutely corrupt. And I know I just butchered that a little bit, but so I'm going to be talking about how we were locked down with a family, and the Canadian expat family, and they had a 4-year-old boy. I'm sorry, 10-year-old boy and a 4-year-old girl, and what we were doing to prepare in case we had to leave. We are going to talk about the things we gathered. For example, nobody has paper maps in Mexico. So one of the things we did is the father, he got right on Google Maps and started printing out really high quality color maps of the area. And we were thinking also about, possibly taking a boat from Puerto Vallarta up north and taking a private jet from Pecos, or I can't remember the actual name of the town, so I printed up maps for that town from the coast to the town because we were going to have to trek inland about 20 miles, and we were not sure how we were going to do that. Also, we started gathering tools. We started talking about building and gathering and sort of improvised weapons. I'm going to talk about, we started putting some packs together, making a strategy plan with this family if we had to go on foot. We were up on the, one of the things that would have been real handy was a pair of high quality telescope or binoculars. We actually had a set of kids binoculars that did help us out because we were trying to look at landmarks that were far away and up high, and sort of so we could have a good bearing on where we were going and where we wanted to go, and plot these things on our maps. And like one thing I thought was a water tower that was pretty far away, and when I looked through the GI Joe kids binoculars, I could see it was a cell phone tower, not a water tower, which was handy. But like at my own bug out bag, I got a pretty sweet collapsible telescope and a pair of really nice binoculars, so we can do these kind of things. So I got a whole bunch of stuff I'm going to talk about. I had a very spiritual, moving time. The last year, a year and a few months ago, when I was at Anarchapulco, I sat with Bufo with Bearheart. Bufo is a sacred medicine. They call it the God molecule. That was extremely profound for me. I'll get into that a little bit in the presentation. And then, there was like there was some pretty crazy stuff that happened with me personally, with this whole sort of adventure. And I can tell you, and even if you wanted to, reach out, to the family I stayed with, but they actually might be part of my presentation too. I haven't got a confirmation yet, but like they were really, really happy that I was with them, for this deal. One of the things that Silver Dave has been saying about me for years is that I'm like MacGyver. Except for I've got better technology and I'm a little more prepared and probably have more experience in MacGyver because he was actually working on a movie set. And, I've been doing it for real. So, yeah. So one thing that was pretty humbling is my friend Craig, who was down there with the Silver Six. There was six of us who went down there for local silver mint. And one of the things that he had said was, he goes, "Well, whoever Jay's with, they're lucky because he's the kind of guy you want, in your on your bug out, property or whatever, or you
Yeah,
want to
no,
be
Jay's
around."
the ad. There are ads and there are subtractions. There's people you got to take care of and drag. Oh, no, help me. Not Jay. Jay's the man. He's somewhere take care of business.
So yeah, that was and one another sort of ironic thing or synchronistic thing that happened I'll throw out there is his family. They were totally planning on going to the beach that morning, early in the morning because it was Sunday, and all the tourists are at the airport on Sunday in Puerto Vallarta, and the local Mexicans don't get up early in the morning and go to the beach. They start piling in the afternoon, later on in the day. So they're going to go early in the morning to the beach. They quite literally would have been, and I got to confirm this. I got to do a little more research here, but they might have been at a beach where an actual, alleged firefight may have happened, but they would have been locked down probably in their car at the beach because there was no moving as soon as these guys started torching every intersection. They had cars and buses, and/or buses, whatever they could find. They just set them on fire to sort of lock down the city. And they were also, now I don't know if the cartel was threatening this or if this was the CIA pretending to be the cartel threatening, but they were putting on like Facebook and social media that if anybody's out on the streets of Puerto Vallarta, the cartel is going to execute them. So everybody just locked down. And I'm not 100% sure that anybody actually died because I just can't believe, what the government says. I also can't believe the cartels. But one thing I can tell you is the cartel is extremely organized, and it's going to be a really bad idea if U.S. military starts doing military actions or war within Mexico, because I got a feeling that there will be a quinceanera to being or a wedding being drone striked, and there's going to be cartel people here in the U.S., which there's a lot of, that are be like, oh, that's not cool, and they're not going to go crazy. They're going to do some strategic stuff that's going to really, really I'm referring it to as Dick Cheney's wet dream, like they were trying to get the Muslims to, have all this blowback, for example, over this, weddings that they're bombing in Lebanon and Syria and stuff and Iraq or whatever. I think it would get really, really nasty in the U.S. where there's high population of essentially Mexican folks. Once the U.S. starts doing, military stuff in Mexico. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that also. But yeah, I got to know a family pretty well. And then I was actually a busboy at the five-star hotel that everybody was staying at the day after because the people at that ran the hotels, the local staff, they weren't allowed to go home because they were worried that the cartel was going to rob them all or possibly kill. And it was on lockdown. They couldn't even go home if they wanted. So they're sleeping, three girls to a bed in the hotel rooms, and the boys are sleeping on cots in a conference room. And at 10:30 at night, after we sort of had a powwow on, well, I guess it was Monday night, the whole dining area, outdoor dining breakfast area, was totally trashed because all the gringos, they're a bunch of lazy gringos go hang out in Puerto Vallarta, and none of them know how to pick up their trash and bring it over to a trash can or clean their tables. So I essentially spent 3 hours doing all that work. And the next day, everybody that was a local in the staff, everyone that was staff member at the Westin Hotel was shaking my hands and giving me tear-felt hugs. Like they'd never seen a gringo actually do this kind of stuff, in their experience. So I made a really great connection with the locals, and for lots of reasons, the locals there in Puerto Vallarta and Acapulco they're just so awesome, and they've been really awesome to me personally, and everybody that participates in Anarchapulco.
Yes, I remember that during that time when I was back home and could not do anything but just follow. I remember you were posting on Anarchapulco's chat and inviting everyone to do something like this where they are at their hotels and places they were staying. So I remember that. And thank you, both of you, Jay and Ernest. We need to wrap up right now. Unfortunately, there are so many questions that I still have for you guys. But yes, dear audience. So yes, as you can hear during this conversation, the gentlemen have so much experience and so much knowledge. So you're all really welcome to join the Non-Conformist Series, the Anarchapulco's ritual event on May 16 and 17. And if you cannot make on those dates, you can always buy a replay. And as also Jay mentioned, you can still have access and can purchase a replay of Anarchapulco Genesis. And remember to use Jay's code to support him in his work. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you, Jay and Ernest, so much for sharing and using your time on this. See you on the Non-Conformist.
Thanks for doing this. One thing before we go, to use a silver, for years we did, anytime you bought anything on Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist or something like that, I just had a principle. I always had I get a discount if I use silver, about 10% of the time. Hell yeah. It's not as hard as you guys think. And you create this mechanism. So I just wanted to share that. And I look forward to the Non-Conformist series that's coming up because I have a use case for all of these things. So we're going to be talking about, how we can make use of this information in being free. And I appreciate you having us on. And this is just the beginning. The beginning is nigh. Here it comes. And the Liberty community is very blessed to have people like Jay and yourself and these events that allow us to come together and be inspired. So I look forward to that.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you and see you next time. Peace, love, and anarchy.